Hello and welcome to the hashtag project with me, Harshin. On today's episode, I interviewed James Sommerville, former VP Global Design at the Coca-Cola Company and currently the founder of Known Unknown. Do visit knownunknown.co, especially if you're a designer. I speak to James about life, about branding, about advertising, about some of his best campaigns at the Coca-Cola Company, and so much more. I had a great time listening and speaking to James, and I'm sure you'll have a fabulous time and a lot of takeaways from this podcast once you listen in. So I'm going to dive straight into the questions. As I said, I'm more of a guy who makes notes, so I have my notes right here next to me. And the first question that's on everybody's minds, and because we are now this generation that's so much inclined into digital and social, and because you have a large history with Coca-Cola, the world's talking about what Ronaldo did, right? And it might be a slightly blown out of proportion thing. I think for a lot of reasons, it's his personal preference. He just sort of took it, he kept it. It's fine, right? It's not necessary just to be blown out of proportion, but because it's Ronaldo, it's happened. What's your take on that?
Well, I guess my take is, as marketeers, as creatives, as huge brands who spend months and years planning, we can strategically try and direct any conversation. That's what marketing is really, it's the power of marketing. But just one thing like that, unplanned, unscripted, you didn't see it coming, and probably neither did he. He didn't wake up that day and think, okay, I'm going to do this. It was just a moment. And that moment then becomes a global message. The power of social media, the power of Ronaldo, the power of Coca-Cola, all together in this unscripted, unplanned moment. It's amazing how as marketeers, we think we are in control of the message, but clearly anything like that can disrupt the message immediately, right? And become the talking point of not just the day or the dinner table, but the week, the month, potentially the year. So for me, it's less about Ronaldo and Coke and what was positive or negative. It's just we are at the mercy of these accidents or moments that can change the direction of a conversation. It's amazing in that sense.
I think there were a lot of good conversations also that came out of it, because a couple of footballers did come out and say that brands are necessary, especially brands that spend so much money, because you're actually able to, fund so much development into the grassroots, take the sports to another level, allow so many other things to happen economically, right? So I think there was a brighter side, but of course, because the power of Ronaldo, and also slightly to do with the fact that people do want to grasp onto something because both the brands involved are really large. Sort of the other conversations didn't get as much limelight as probably what Ronaldo did. I don't know if you heard them.
Yeah, and more than anything, hey, this is a great learning opportunity, right, for Coca-Cola, I'm sure, but also other brands. What are the takeaways that will allow brands to, kind of learn from this and maybe in a future situation be aware of these potential incidents that are unplanned? So I think there should be some bright spots that come from this. The power of a brand, the power of an individual. And then ultimately the consumer, the power of a community, the power of social media, the power of the world. So I do think there's some great lessons. I think it will be a fantastic marketing case study one day, in the future, maybe taught in schools as part of a advertising marketing program. And so I do think good things will come from these unexpected moments.
Absolutely, James. Now, taking away from this moment, right, leading into one question about what you mentioned, learning lessons out of this, right? Do you see brands being a little bit more responsible? Not just because of this, but I think over the last 2 years, you see a lot of consumers wanting to see how brands are responding to the pandemic. how they're taking care of their own employees and associates, and how they're responding to various situations during this, right? Has this led, and all of this, I mean, I'm not talking about just this particular incident, but across the last 2 years, do you think brands now have to be a little bit more responsible with how, with eco-friendliness, with sustainability, with all of this in the picture?
I think brands of tomorrow that do not have a purpose will not last. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, if I said to the brand, what is your purpose? They will say profit, like growth, to crush the competition, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the narrative was in the 90s and the early part, now the purpose is really to connect back to humanity, back to the planet, give back in some way, and they have to be seen to be doing these things, which has got to be a good thing for everybody if they can deliver on that promise. But a brand without a purpose really, will not survive. So again, another really interesting change in like 15 or 20 years, maybe, on how brands have pivoted now to become much more purpose driven.
Right. I read somewhere about two things that you mentioned, James, in terms of storytelling and authenticity, right? Brands going forward will have to be very, very aware of these two things. I would love it if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I think, we were all kids once, right? And I think the magical part of being a child, a very young child, 5 or age 6, is when, your parent maybe, or your big brother, sister reads you a story at nighttime. There's a magical time that allows our minds as young people to fantasize. So stories are fundamental, maybe to even the human race. So I think stories feel like I can make a connection with a brand, and then if it's told in an authentic and real way, so it's believable. We don't recognize, we don't see the BS. We're too smart now. Consumers are too smart, so they will recognize when it doesn't feel authentic. But I still think deep down we're 6-year-old kids, and we still love a good story. We still love a good movie. We still love a good Netflix. We still love a good kind of like chit chat with our friends, or over maybe a beverage, or over the phone. Stories are important for life. And so when brands really kind of start to tell those great stories, we remember them, we like them, we emotionally connect, because we can see some of ourselves in that too. So I think some of the greatest brands do that very well. And I don't think that will change in 100 years. The platforms will change. Maybe the execution will also change, but the need for stories told in this authentic way will always be there.
Fabulous. The word you used there, story, quite a few times. I want to now get into your story, James, right? I think it's one of the most inspirational stories for a lot of people out there. And our listeners are going to absolutely love listening to you, your story, and your journey so far. I'd like to start off with your childhood, right? I know you've spoken very fondly of one of your uncles. I know you've spoken fondly about your parents, your grandma. There's a long, wonderful storyline there as well. If you could just walk us a little bit through your childhood and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, my childhood was great. I had no disturbing memories. I think what I do recall was my dad was very entrepreneurial. I moved like 25 times in my life, house, because my dad was always like, we were up or we were down, we were up and down. So I was in a household that was comfortable and happy, but there was always this kind of unexpected change around the corner, usually driven by my dad's career, because I was a kid. So I think that exposed me to this ability to be able to change. And this today, I think my passion is I look for and embrace that change. But my childhood was a little bit like that. And so, but that living with parents who were more entrepreneurial in the 1970s, it actually probably rubbed off on me to see that, and maybe the word entrepreneur was not even used back then, but it was just this lifestyle of, he felt in control of his destiny, because he was running his own. He sold cars. My dad sold used cars. So, but still, it was this idea of, he wasn't necessarily working for a corporation at that point. So I was intrigued by that. I did a few little side hustles, and by 10 or age 11 or 12, I was kind of moving a few things around, trying to sell things at school. So maybe already, I caught the bug early on to be potentially an entrepreneur.
Well, that's fabulous to know. That's fabulous. So when you moved homes, did you also move schools?
Yeah, many, yeah, several times I moved school, and there's always a nervous, a kid walking into a new school is scary, right? No friends, new
Absolutely.
location. Then you become teenage, so a little bit more like, yourself, your body, everything is changing. So that was always probably probably the biggest challenge, I think, how to make friends with a new crowd. You become the new guy again. And so I think that was something that maybe later in life, I consider myself to be an introvert. I was a very shy kid. I wouldn't be the loudest voice in the classroom, or the joker, or the fun. I was always in the background, and maybe not wanting to shine or share my voice, because there's a nervousness, I think, as a kid. So I always remember that. It didn't make me necessarily unhappy, but I was conscious of it. I was conscious of being more introvert than extrovert.
Now, James, when you change so many schools, you come in touch with so many cultures, you come in touch with so many different people, right? You interact with them. You're in the same, classroom with them. Did that play to your advantage? See, our childhood plays a large role in who we become as adults, right? You must have picked up some bits because of that lifestyle that you were leading as a child. Do you see that playing out to an advantage today for you in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, even today. So we go back and forth between today and a child, but today, all our careers are grown around relationships. Okay, we may call it networking, we may call it, kind of sales, but ultimately relationships are at the foundation of most, careers, maybe, communities. So that relationship is very important. And I think maybe as a teenager, although I was shy and a little reserved, actually it forced me to make friends. It forced me to say, hey. And so I think later on in my career, it became less of a challenge, because even though, I wasn't still the joker, I was never the loudest, but I learned to navigate how to connect with people, which ultimately has become the foundation of my career thereafter. So maybe it was a blessing at school that I was faced with these boyhood, teenage challenges that somehow they become useful later in your life, right?
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned your dad was a businessman, was an entrepreneur, right? You had a lot of ups and downs because of that. Now, that must have seeded a little bit of entrepreneurship in you for you to then do what you did. But do you think that played a role? Seeding a little bit of...
I think so he had his main business. He sold used cars, but then all of a sudden, I remember I was 11 years old, 1977, and there was a new craze that came over from the USA. And so we were watching on TV, and it was called skateboarding.
Right.
Nobody ever heard of skateboarding. Nobody in the UK knew what a skateboard was. My dad drove to Europe, to Germany, found a production plant manufacturing skateboards. He bought 20,000, put them in a huge truck, and he drove back. And so when he landed back in the UK, he was selling skateboards. Now, many of them broke. The wheels came loose on the journey back. I fixed them. I put the wheels back together. So I was selling skateboards in my local village to the kids. Like, so my entrepreneurial moment, that was the light bulb moment for me. I took the waste, the broken ones, I fixed them, and then maybe I had like 50. He had the 20,000 and he was selling to retail, blah, blah, blah. So he was looking for opportunities all the time as an entrepreneur. That was the thing that really helped me kind of understand, maybe this is the life I'd like to lead, you know, where you see an opportunity, might be a good one, may not be a good one, but you work hard, you hustle, and you try and make something from that moment.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing something by yourself, however small or large it is. But at that point of time in your childhood, that was a very large thing, right? Having 50 skateboards, fixing them, selling them yourself. I think that must have really, like you said, you know, that eureka moment or that light bulb within you just went off, saying that this is something that probably and that probably seeded within you at that point of time, right? So
everything from fixing, marketing. I put a sign in the post office. That's my marketing.
oh wow,
They were £5. Some kid said, I have 3, I'll give you £3. I said, no, we'll take 4. So negotiation. I mean, this is all very juvenile, but actually it's the foundation of most trades today, right?
Absolutely.
The simple things allow you to learn from that experience.
How old were you? How old were you when you did this?
I was 11, 1977.
Right. Oh, even this entire thing happened when you were 11. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. It must have been something. Just to give our audience context, you're currently based in Atlanta, but a lot of your childhood was in Yorkshire, UK, right? So if you could just run us through how your childhood was, especially to do with, I know you mentioned a lot about street art as well, right? And this led to you then becoming a designer, right? And becoming who you are today. So that bit of inspiration that sort of led you to become who you are today. How did you choose that career? When did you know that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And this is how it's going to be, how I'm going to lead my life. So a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, to start with Yorkshire, because it's a very interesting part of the world. 100 years ago, it was like the Silicon Valley of the Industrial Revolution. It was boom town. But when I grew up as a teenager, it was like, okay, the textile mills all closed, everything felt derelict. And so I had this history of a town that had been very affluent and successful, but not in the 70s or 80s. And then so that as a backdrop was the location. And then in the late 70s again, music starts to become like, for every young person, music is a passion. And in the late 70s was the emergence of punk rock music in the UK. So the music is one thing, but it was the expression of the style of fashion. I was looking at album covers, graphic execution, and it spoke to me. It spoke to me in a way that I was starting to see an identity emerging, centered around a musical genre. But for me as a teenager, it started to start to see, wow, this is interesting. This is like a design execution based around this really interesting style of music. So then that led to me during and after art school to do some street art and some pavement sketching, which ultimately then, brought out my more creative side. That led me to launch the business when I was 19 years old. But I think those teenage years of, music, fashion, record design, execution, they're very, very important. At the time, I never noticed, but afterwards I realized that's the thing. And then with my dad's entrepreneurial mindset, when I add this together, this is the reason why I probably start the agency.
Lovely. Coming to your agency now, right? Great lead up into that. Attic. Uh, Firstly, why set up an agency, right? As opposed to working elsewhere. I know about the entrepreneurial spirit, but were there more reasons to it? That's what I want to understand. Secondly, about the name, about your partner, and how was the whole journey with Attic?
Right. So this is like now mid 1980s, 1986.
Right.
We finished art school. So we were like 19 years old. We did 3 years at the art school, and unemployment was very high in the UK. It wasn't a very good. It's never a good time for a young person, right? But it was also a difficult time then for a young person to find a job. We were trying to find a job. And so maybe we felt Simon, his name was Simon Needham, my best friend from art school. We think, well, maybe if we do start a studio for 1 year, after that 1 year, the unemployment rate would drop, there would be more opportunities, and we can go and when we're 20 years old, go and find a real job. Maybe in a studio, in an agency, blah, blah. So the strategy was 1 year just to see, and then maybe we can use that as the experience year, and then go find a job. That 1 year turned into like 25 years. So we never did finally get that real job. We just stayed the course with Attic, Simon and I, and and from the founding studio of my grandmother's attic bedroom.
Fabulous. Attic has something very wonderful with the Princess Trust, right? If you could just elaborate on that a little bit. The £2,000, that entire story, how it helped you kickstart. It was almost like seed funding is what you said. So if you could just speak to our listeners about that as well.
Yeah, when Simon and I decided to launch Attic, we first of all went to the banks for a loan. We went to maybe 5 or 6 banks, like UK banks, Lloyd's, NatWest, and every bank said no. You guys come back when you're older, cut your hair, look a little more smart, but everybody said no. And that was pretty devastating for us. And then we heard about a charity by His Royal Highness Prince Charles called the Prince's Trust, and we're like, okay, let's go check out what this is about. And we realized that the Prince's Trust was there to help young people in need, young people who are looking for that first step. So we made an application. We went to see the Prince's Trust office in Yorkshire, and we submit a business plan. We did not know what a business plan was.
Okay.
So we wrote it on like one piece of paper and just like send this in. They gave us an interview, and then they said, congratulations, we are awarding you with £2,000. So for us, this was like, we hit the lottery. It was the jackpot moment of £2,000 for 2 young teenagers who had no money. Absolutely. It was like an amazing. But when I look back now, what the Prince's Trust gave Simon and I was more than £2,000. The money was important, but the Prince's Trust gives young people the confidence. It gives young people the belief.
True.
That somebody believes in you. And so for us, our shoulders became broader. We felt like somebody believed in what we could do, not like the banks. And so the £2,000 was great, but it gave us the permission then to go on and achieve something, and through that belief. And I think that's the genius of the Prince's Trust. Even today, that's what they do. They help over 1 million young people. So we owe our agency and our first part of our life down to the Prince's Trust for sure.
Wow. I mean, that one change, that one bit that came into your life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fabulous. And that impact, the impact of that one small moment today has is going to last for decades or centuries, because they're creating so many professionals, so many people who are changing ecosystems, changing so many moments, right? So I think that's fabulous. Coming back to Attic, I think there's something wonderful that you created at that point of time, the Instagram of the 80s, right? And that's one of the most wonderful stories I've heard. I mean, how did you pull that off? What did you do? What was your thought process when you did that? If you could just walk us through that.
Yeah. So, okay, with the £2,000, we spent this on a piece of technology that nobody had heard of in Huddersfield, in Yorkshire. We bought an Apple Mac. We bought one of the first in the north of England. It was very early Apple Mac, but when we start to play on the Apple, it's like, wow, look at what we can do. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. So fast forward like 5 years or 8 years, we were invested in the Apple brand, very early adopters. Then we start to push the technology of the hardware and the software and start to invite designers to come and join our small agency and create some expressions that they believe is something that is meaningful for them. We had no way to capture this work other than in a more traditional way of printing books. So our Instagram of the 90s became a series of books we called noise books, because we were trying to make some visual noise. So going through the pages of a noise now is very old work now, but at the time for us, it was a way to express ourselves, very similar to the quote punk rock, right? I mentioned how they were creatively expressing themselves like 15 years earlier. Well, then in the 90s, we decided to use the power of the emerging technology, both hardware and Adobe software, and then bring this together in a Bible of design, which was then, when we look back, that was maybe our Instagram feed, very visual, very eclectic, different voices. But this was a very important moment for Simon and I and the team at Attic.
Okay. So this probably went on from did you start this off somewhere in the 80s and it went on till the 90s? Was it like that? Because you started in 86, right? You started Attic in 86.
Attic was founded in 86, but our noise publications, probably the first one we did was around 1996.
The 90s. Okay.
So we were already, as an agency, 10 years into our business. So we were doing okay. I think what we were lacking, though, was some really youthful clients, some sports brands, some technology brand, music brands, just like things that would actually be, inspiring for young designers.
Right.
So we created the Noise Book to then try to attract a new list of clients, and we attracted MTV, PlayStation, Nike, a whole different group of clients then became interested in working with Attic after the production of the Noise Book. So it was an experiment, but it had a commercial reason. It was to attract a client that we weren't working. So from that point on, it became for us a very powerful way to show our capability to a new roster of clients, and was very successful for this.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. Would you want to speak about some of the best work you've done at Attic? Some few campaigns that you can speak about how they came about, or the challenges that you faced in creating those campaigns. Anything, if there's something that you can speak about the work that you did there. I know you mentioned some brands, probably something more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something deeper than work. Every agency has an amazing, portfolio, right? Every agency in the world can quote a fantastic brand. I think the special thing I recall from Attic is the culture that we developed, the teams. Bear in mind, we were not trained businessmen. We were not trained at growing agencies. When I look back now at the people who worked with Attic in the 90s, maybe even the 80s, but the 90s and into 2000, maybe 20 of them are now running their own agency.
Wow.
In London, in San Francisco, in Europe, in Australia. Like we gave, I guess, in a way, an opportunity to those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I take a lot of pride out of that as a project. Sure, great clients, Heineken, MTV I mentioned. We did things for Coca-Cola too later, but really it's the development of the human side of the culture that then have gone on to prosper and grow amazing agencies in their own world. I think that's my most proud project within Attic, if I'm being really honest.
Fabulous, fabulous. One question. So being an entrepreneur has a lot of different aspects that you need to take care of, right? All the way from finance to people management to the kind of work you're doing. You must have picked all of this up along the way, right? What is the one thing you did absolutely not like doing?
Personally, business development. Okay. And that is probably a hangover from my introvert teenage years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in the old days, when I say the old days, like 20 years ago, before social media, you need to pick up the phone and you need to call someone and say, hey, my name is James and, we're doing this. I used to get very nervous.
Okay.
It wasn't a natural skill set for me to do that.
Right, right.
So, that was a challenge for me personally, but thankfully Simon was amazing at that.
Okay.
That balanced it out. That was his superpower. And so therefore I took a more, a studio-based role and, he was out seeing more clients and doing that. So we had a perfect, kind of yin yang of just kind of syncing that together. I think today, I have less, I'm older and also it's easier to find people without the cold call of the phone call. We can find many ways in social media to make a connection. But I do think that was maybe one of my biggest challenges in the early part of Attic.
Right, right. Now moving on from Attic to the next phase of your life, and this is how we started off the interview as well, which is Coca-Cola, right? How did that happen? And if you could just lead us into not just how it happened, but what else did you do at Coca-Cola?
Got it. Maybe I could show you a couple of images, and I've been conscious I'm talking.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Let me do a screen share, if that's okay.
Yes,
maybe
absolutely.
we can add this to the conversation. If you enable my screen share, I'll come back and. But I think the story of the story of my journey to Coca-Cola was interesting too. Originally I received this project.
Okay.
Now, this is not my work. This is July or August of 2006. Germany World Cup, FIFA World Cup in Germany. Fantastic World Cup. And then Coca-Cola called me and said, James, okay, this is how we were looking in the summer of 2006 at the FIFA World Cup. We need to move on. Would you be interested in helping the Coca-Cola brand in the communication of football in the world of football, create a new identity for Coke and football, soccer? So I said, sure, because this work was okay, but I mean, no, it's also very textured and complicated, and there's some guy, holding a chicken. It feels like, maybe look for something more iconic for Coke. So the project that we delivered was my very first project with Coca-Cola.
Wow.
How to capture the game, how to capture the brand, and how to capture the world in one piece of work. So it becomes timeless, simple, modular, scalable, any country, any team. It's immediately soccer, football. We can tell by the pattern. And so for us, this was a kind of great introduction to Coca-Cola.
Right.
And my first project in 2006. And then I worked with them on my client for like 6 or 7 years, and then eventually they called me and said, "Hey James, please would you consider coming and join the family?" And then so I joined Coke from that point on. You know, and when I joined Coke, there was a lot of this too. Like it was very all over the world. You know, this is a huge machine.
Yeah,
Different
absolutely.
execution, etc. So I went for more of a classic route at the time. I was fascinated by the archives. I was fascinated by the beautiful work from the 1960s, the 1940s, how Coca-Cola had played such an important role in popular culture. And I was looking for these inspiration from the past to see, you know, how you could take something like this, which is a beautiful sketch or painting from maybe the 1940s, you know, and even when you get into the detail, has the light and the liquid moment. And I thought, well, how do we shoot this today? How do I replicate this? So yeah, we did a few experiments like this, where all of a sudden it's still the same bottle, it's still the same liquid, and it's still the same beauty. But maybe, you know, there's just a new way to start to think about and express it. So part of my initial, you know, kind of period of Coca-Cola was to explore new ways of communicating the same story.
Fabulous. And if you could speak about some of the campaigns that really, you know, caught the attention of the entire world that you did at Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I mean, Coca-Cola is such a huge stage for creativity.
Right.
Always wanting to stay relevant to young people. Maybe today, you know, we may be called Gen Z, but certainly to be always in the, you know, conversation.
Right.
And when I think about the conversation, I think with Coke, it has to be a conversation around the dinner table and then around the world at the same time.
Right.
So that's the beauty of the brand like Coca-Cola, is it can be amongst friends, we're eating pizza, we're having a Coke, we're having a conversation, and then it through social media and through the power of creativity can quickly move across the world at the same time. So I was always very you know, mindful of the scale of a brand like Coke, not just the small conversation, but the huge conversation. One of the things that I enjoyed was this notion, and I'm going to go back to screen share because it's a visual story,
Absolutely.
was how to kind of like take again these archive images from Coke. Beautiful work from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. This is like iconic advertising.
Absolutely. This looks so good.
Yeah, and the common thread is the Coca-Cola bottle is always present. The product is always there, and without the product, there's no story. So, but I gave these posters, these advertisements to 100 designers. With my team, we work with 100 designers to produce 100 posters to celebrate the centenary. Because Coca-Cola was 100. It was designed. The bottle was designed in 1915. So what came back then was this expression of the brand. Again, central is always the Coca-Cola bottle, but different through the eyes and the minds of different creators. Seeing the Coca-Cola bottle in this way, you know, allows people to express the brand like this. And this shows the confidence of an iconic brand, to allow others to express the brand in a way that they see it. Now, surely it's held together through color palette, through the use of the Coca-Cola bottle is always there. You'll always see the Coca-Cola bottle. Sometimes it's hidden, but it's always part of the story. And that was the idea, to kind of create this new gallery of expression that would make Coca-Cola brand feel not 100 years old, but 100 years young.
Correct.
For the Coca-Cola glass bottle. So for us, this is just a good way and a good lesson to, even when things do feel old, 100 years is a long time. It can also feel like it has a new role and a new injection of energy and vitality if seen through the eyes of a whole new audience. So I think that was also a very important part of understanding the brand itself. And we did many things like galleries and creative ways to engage our global system. And so that was a very fun project for me in 2015.
Right. And you did something very special in 2017 as well, right? Which is primarily to do, I think, with Australia, the Australian packaging, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was it's amazing how, okay, so Coca is so huge and so, on every street corner, right? And so present in our lives. But when it comes down to it, I think there's a level of intimacy required with the brand.
Correct.
I mean, brands are intimate. Brands have a personal relationship with an individual. And so when the beauty of working on a Coca-Cola, you could be across the world and culturally relevant, but you have to connect with the consumer and the community. So in Australia in 2017, the country was going to a national vote for the same-sex marriage, and many brands, I guess, would come out and support this great cause. And Coca-Cola did the same. They want to create a piece of packaging, and it was hashtag say yes, vote yes, or something. So we created for the first time, a unique piece of packaging that took the Coca-Cola famous script logo and created a word that would live on the packaging. And Coca-Cola has never really used other words apart from Coca-Cola on its packaging. Maybe our names, but that was a different campaign. So I brought this with me here today as well. And so I figured,
Fabulous.
To use the Coca-Cola script and create the word love, is a very timeless and powerful sort of expression. It brings the world together. You can bring two together and create the word. And so this idea of, showing how the brand feels about humanity, how the brand feels about the campaign. But it becomes a timeless piece of packaging. It's not just about 2017, because we'll want to talk about love in 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. So we will look for ideas where, they are timely, but they are also timeless. That's an important part of the Coca-Cola DNA, I think. And so the love packaging was a great project, a single project for a single campaign, but still, for me, a very memorable and fun project to work on.
No, absolutely. That looks fabulous. It truly is timeless, like you mentioned. So a question here then. Do you consciously want to be a part of conversations or also drive conversations? Either way, right? Do you consciously see and scout for such moments? Either it is to do with the country or the culture that you're a part of, but do you consciously do that? Are you always looking out for that?
I think so. I think the old days of brands pushing messaging, like to consumers, and we're like, oh, okay, what is this? We will still watch a TV commercial. We'll still look at a piece of advertising in print. Sure, that will still be relevant. But how the best brands engage the consumer in the conversation? So less push, and more like, okay, Len, what do you think? How do you see it? And I think this is the future of great marketing. Not just the voice from above, from the brand, coming down to consumers below, but a two-way dialogue that allows a voice of the consumer, but that also solidifies the relationship. It solidifies the engagement emotionally. And I think that's important for us now with any brand. It could be an automotive brand, a beverage, a food, a restaurant, an airline. How do we there's so much choice, right? How do we choose? And I think when we choose is when we feel there's a connection, like a friendship in a way. And so the future of that for me is when brands allow that two-way conversation to happen. So not just purely advertise, but actually let's, what do you think? What would you do? And it takes a very brave brand to allow and give permission to do that. But we'll see. The next 10 years, I think, will be very interesting for brands like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think so. Do you think when you're making a decision in the boardroom, right? You have a ton of ideas on the table. A lot of it today is definitely led by data, right? That this is going to be the next big campaign, or this is what we should be doing. This is what we are listening to. This is what the consumers are speaking. So do you think intuition, which used to also drive that, I think this campaign is going to do really well, right? Do you think that's taken a backseat somewhere? Or do you still think that intuition does drive you to actually choose the best campaign that the brand should do?
I think intuition still has a huge role. Data has such a huge role. Data can provide the signals, provide the evidence that something is working, not working, connecting, not connecting, etc. So data allows an intuitive idea to be amplified, maybe, because there's a, but in the beginning, if creativity is only based on data, then maybe we won't make too much progress, because we only know what we know. And great creativity takes risks. It intentionally goes into the unknown. And then we realize, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to share it. I'm going to repost it. And then that data is important for us then to learn from and then amplify. But I think they have to live together. If it was all data, then maybe it would be slow progress creatively. If it was all intuition, then you would miss so many opportunities that you could have amplified through the knowledge and data. So it's definitely and many other things in there as well, in terms of making sure it's present at the right time and where and how and what. But certainly, I think data and intuition, the magic is when they work together.
Both go hand in hand, is what you're primarily saying, right?
Yeah,
both absolutely need to work with each other, right? So just a question in terms of how do you define the intuition that you were speaking about, right? Of course, probably you would also say that it comes with a lot of experience. It comes in with a lot of things that that you've sort of done over the years. But how would you define it if you had to?
I would say that as a creative, and we can define ourselves as designers, advertising, digital. There's so many creative disciplines, but I think there's an always-on mindset from a creative. There is no 9 to 5. There is no turn off on a Friday and let's go to the weekend. Like, you are constantly like looking, observing, soaking up. I jump in a car or maybe an Uber. I go to the airport, and in that 20-minute drive, I've maybe seen 100 identities, 50 slogans, 25 photographic styles on billboards. This for me is like reading a design book of observing what is happening in the world today. From minimal, clean graphic to rich photographic to storytelling to logos of local entrepreneurs, shop mom and pop shops. This is where the inspiration is, and it gives you a kind of a barometer of what is happening in the world and what is important. What are people using? Color palette, typeface, whatever. For me, then that drives some thinking in certainly in my own process to think about what could be next. Why are we doing this today, and what could tomorrow also look like as well? So I think it's that always on mindset that any creator moving into an industry like this, it probably already has instinctively. And if not, then maybe needs to think about how you're constantly looking for those ideas.
Right. Now again, now that you mentioned you're always looking out for ideas, right? Is there any moment when you say, I need to turn off a little bit? I need to just relax?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We're in a world now where I mentioned the 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5. If you need to relax at 2 p.m., then you should relax. You should switch off. So I think the post-pandemic, workplace or it allows us to be on or off to suit maybe when we're ready. Now, sure, we have meetings, we have jobs and things, but also I think there's a kind of more modular approach to the way that we may work in the future. And I think turning off is very, very important part of the creativity, actually. So when I say always on, I mean, you kind of don't say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done. That's not something that's what I refer to with always on. But sometimes in the day or in the evening, you say like, okay, now I just need to watch a movie.
Right.
But then I start seeing things in the movie.
Yeah.
So, you never know. And I actually think when I sleep, sometimes I've woken up with an idea. I have to scribble it down straight away. Some crazy dream that leads to maybe make it lead to nonsense or may lead to an idea. I don't know. But I think those are very important. But it's kind of that downtime that is important too as well. Downtime is still creative time, I think.
Right. Coming to the fact that a lot of times people see the success a lot more as opposed to what you've done behind the doors to get to where you are today, right? There must have been a ton of challenges. There must have been a lot of moments where you would have faced some difficulties on your own, right? Now, how do you overcome these challenges? Do you have any personal mantra based on which you know that during difficult times, these are the 5 things I do to make sure that I overcome them? And secondly, if you could speak a little bit about the importance of managing your mental health, both.
Yeah, I maybe go back to my entrepreneurial father, and he reminded me as a young kid, whatever you do, it's a long time since he in our world, in our part of the world, that somebody maybe has really died of starvation in the UK. Now that's a fairly blunt way, but it's like, how bad does it have to be, before the devastating moment happens? So just because it goes bad doesn't mean to say it won't be a good day tomorrow. I think working at Attic, we had so many pitches we did not win. If we pitch 5, maybe we won 2. Or maybe we won 3, but we lost 2. So how do you wake up the next day and speak to the team? So overcoming that adversity. Also, my local town, I have a football team. We seem to lose every game. So I'm like, also I support England in the World Cup. We lose every World Cup. So I'm used to that, like this eventually bad news is coming eventually. So I have this ability, and maybe I train myself, and maybe it's just human instinct of survival to be able to wake up the next day and say, it's okay. This didn't work, but this will. So I think that's an important skill set for everybody, and I know instinctively we have that as a survival mechanism. Right. So I think whether it's in your career, your life, your sport, your world, your community, I think experiencing those failures is very, very important. So if I was 100% successful all my life, well, firstly, I would be lying. And secondly, that wouldn't be a good, training mechanism for me, because when that failure comes, I would not know how to cope with that.
Absolutely.
So it's just as important to fail along the way as to succeed or feel successful if you're at that part of your life.
Right. How do you, for yourself, for example, how do you yourself recharge your mental health? Right? Do you do anything specific? Do you meditate? Are you spiritual? Or do you? I read somewhere that you love working out. You think it's very important to take that walk, to take that jog. Are these small aspects of your day that you ensure you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think my spiritual outlet, and meditation is more on the physical workout, which is a mental. I do it for the mental power and the reset reasons. I think the physical side, is a nice bonus, right? Everybody would like to look okay, but I think for me, just to go on a 3-hour bike ride, a 45-minute run, swimming a few lengths if I can get to the pool. I think this is like, for me, an opportunity to just kind of like rebalance a few things. I work out every day, unless I'm traveling or whatever, but I try and have a routine of working out. I always work out in the morning, and you can never work out on an evening for some reason, because it's like a battery charge for me. After the workout, I feel alive, I feel on my game, or whichever way you would describe it. But for me, so that as a routine, I think is also is my passion. And I enjoy. I'm a sports fan, and I enjoy. Kind of like I'm competitive. So somebody wanted to race me in a pool, I will at least try. Or shoot pool.
Right.
I think that's just a kind of a thing I always had as a kid, and as I grew up, I liked sport. So I now turn that into my moment of meditation and allowing me to sort of reset on a daily basis.
Fabulous. Coming now to, I think, one of your favorite subjects, if not the favorite subject, known unknown, right? Something that I think is from the heart, right? I've seen you speak so passionately about it, about the entire project. And I'd love for you to introduce known unknown to our audience and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, great. And if I divide my career into sort of chapters, chapter 1 was Attic,
right?
As an adult, as a career. Chapter 2 with Coca-Cola, and chapter 3 now is the fusion of the two. Everything I learned at Attic of culture, community, design, audience, those noise books coming together through different creative minds. Everything I learned at Coca-Cola about global scale, strategic marketing, connecting with a global system. So in Known Unknown, I felt, what is next? So Known Unknown for me was not a new agency. It was not going to be a cool studio like wherever, Brooklyn, New York, wherever. I wanted it to be a community of talented individuals around the world. When I wrote down my first business plan on 2018, like, what is the future of the agency? Is it a real physical place, or is it this kind of network of amazing talents from all creative disciplines, all cultures, all ages? And the known unknown was, what if I could give an unknown designer an opportunity to work on a known iconic brand?
Wonderful.
And bring them together, and what magic could happen, and what an amazing opportunity for that unknown designer, but what an amazing outcome for the brand to have that kind of like influx of ideation from people who never worked on it. So Known Unknown formally launched this year as a community. Of course, now, distributed work is not unusual. During the pandemic, of course, everybody was remote, distributed in some way. And so now it's a very normal thing to be, connected through, not through physical space, but connected through association. So Known Unknown is about inviting every creative in the world to join us. And we want you to share your stories, your questions. I believe we have so much we all know, but there's so much we don't know.
Right.
We're lifelong learners, and so we're open to people sharing their stories. So it's about sharing, asking, collaborating, and learning from each other. And only, formally launched our new website only 10 days ago. So right now that we have about 900, it's a small but growing family of creatives from maybe 30 countries around the world.
That's fabulous.
But when you connect, this guy and this girl, and someone from Asia and Latin, and someone in Europe, and they have something in common. It's magical.
Right.
How they can help each other, and then we can work together with clients, so we can actually engage commercially. There has to be a commercial reason, but the bringing together of talent. So if there is a pitch is, I would like all creatives and designers to come together in a way that we can help each other and we can receive help, and that's what Known Unknown is really about.
Fabulous, fabulous, James. If you could just spell out the URL for the website so that our users can log in immediately.
Sure. Go to knownunknown.co.
.co. Okay.
And then
okay.
.co. .co. And then you'll see a landing page. We invite you to sign up. We invite you then to come across to our community page, and we'll make an amazing celebration of your work. But also we'll start to introduce you to conversations, introduce you to other people, like-minded people, and then who knows? Let's see where it goes. We want to invite people to the party, and then people will start to talk in the party, right? And that leads to connections, that leads to growth, that leads to opportunities, and that would be my perfect outcome for Known Unknown.
I think collaborations are really key to growth. And I think that's what you're fostering at Known Unknown, right? Collaborations between people as well as between brands and people. So I think that's wonderful, right? It also helps everybody grow holistically. I think that's also something that Known Unknown will be doing. And I presume that's also going to happen, right? Are you going to lead this into workshops? Are you going to lead this into anything else in the future?
Yeah, for sure. We have big plans for Known Unknown, and it's not just for freelancers. This is for creatives who work in agencies, creatives who work in brands, on the brand team, the brand side. So in-house, in agency, student, young designers coming through, seasoned. My oldest is, I hope he doesn't mind saying, he's 83 years old in the community. Wow. Our youngest is 18. So they can teach each other things. It's not just the seasoned looking down at the young. It's a two-way conversation, like I mentioned earlier with brands. So for us, this is an opportunity then to host workshops, seminars, propose and give opportunities on live briefs, paid briefs. We have a little statement on the website. We will never ask for anything for free. But you can sign up for free. That's the only thing. That's the only time we'll ever ask for anything for free. Right. We believe in respecting individuals and their profession, and we want to bring people together to work. And if the opportunity is there, then we work, and that can be great for business too.
Lovely, James. Now I'm going to just dive into a little bit about a few things known about you and a few things unknown about you, right? Just taking off from where your current, your current phase in life, and driving that ahead for people to know a little bit more about who James is, right? So here's what I'd want to start off with. Are you a voracious reader? Do you read? Is that a part of what you do on a daily or a weekly basis?
Yeah, I mean, less and less only in recent months because of workload. But I don't always. I enjoy a good read of a design book too. I like to look at stories. I like to read magazines from 20, 30, 40 years ago, even newspaper, right? The headline, the story, the typography. I mentioned already I enjoyed running, and I have a great book. It's a recommendation called Running Within. Okay. This is about two marathon runners who they write about the psychology of running and pushing through the pain barrier when you are training for marathons. But for me, this is also a great creative lesson, a great life lesson, because we have different barriers every day. And that comes back to your early question, is how do you get through that and still keep going? So I think when I try and look at books like this, I see the lesson they're providing to runners, but I also see the opportunity outside of maybe just runners in everyday life and creative momentum. Many designers, we sketch something, we screw up, we throw it aside, like this idea of resetting the idea, I think is also important. And I think, looking for books like that, I think are very interesting outside of just the creativity and the creative world.
Right. One unknown habit of yours, James, that probably people who follow you and listen to you but are not aware of.
I guess this was the nervous part of the podcast, but because it's a great question and I didn't come too prepared, but
right.
Okay. I love to play pool, right? Shoot pool.
Okay.
And when we have a little, gathering at our house, there's always a pool competition with some money on the table. So I like this. I like to my kids play, and so it's a pastime. It's another release from the day to day. But there's the science side of it. There's the fun side, and just chilling out. So I think that's something that I enjoy. I have a little fear of heights, for sure.
Oh wow!
I don't like to be in tall buildings on balconies. No way.
Is flights a problem too?
No, because in a flight, I'm in the confine of the aircraft.
Right.
It's the looking over something. I also did the VR goggles, and I'm on the edge of a cliff. This is like making me really nervous. I don't necessarily want to take that step, even though it's pure carpet. In the real world. No, this scares me, and I think I've a little sometimes wake up or have a dream about that situation. Hopefully, never comes to it, but this is the back of my mind a little fear of heights for sure.
Wow. Okay. One unknown brand or campaign. When I say unknown, I obviously mean one of the smaller brands that you worked for, say an Attic, right? But a campaign that you did for them that you still remember because it was that good and impactful for them.
Wow, that's another great question. I think if I look at like all the brands I have had the pleasure of working on, I'll go to a space that maybe you may not expect me to go, and because of the product. Okay, so I spoke a lot about my dad, right? So, but eventually he passed away, and he passed away because he was a smoker, and he died of emphysema maybe like 30 years ago now. So eventually the cigarette kind of caught up on my dad. And then we had an opportunity in maybe the year he passed or 2 years later, we had Attic, we had an opportunity coming in from a tobacco brand. And I was like, no, I hate smoking. This took my parent away, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of slept on it and thought, I wonder what my dad would say. I wonder what my dad would say if he knew, as an entrepreneur. So, and we asked the team, and everybody was like, we needed some work back then. So we took the business. And I was at first very, nervous about taking tobacco brand. Didn't sit well with me.
I'm sure.
But then I thought about my dad, and I thought, he probably he smoked like all day, every day. He probably spent like £100,000 in his life on cigarettes. So I felt to myself, if my dad felt I was recouping some of that family investment that he spent. So I'm like, you know what? It's time to accept this and take the budget from the tobacco company. And so it was also a creative, such an amazing creative brief. But it was difficult for me at first, but I also felt I was at peace with it. Because I was thinking how my dad would look at this brand in our portfolio,
right?
And I felt he would have given us like the thumbs up, like do it. So we did. So for me, that was a challenge in the beginning, but you know, I overcame my demons
Right.
of cigarette, and we took the business on, and we had the client like 4 or 5 years.
Wow, wow. You know, the way you've spoken about your dad so far, right? I'm pretty sure he would have said, take it up, because he had that entrepreneurial spirit within himself, and I don't think he would have really said, or like you rightly mentioned, it'd be like one way you saw it was that get back a little bit of the investment we've done in the industry, but the other way is also take it up as a challenge. He would have definitely wanted you to take it up as a challenge. So I have a question about your dad here, James. Um, did he, see you when he saw you succeed at Attic, for however long that journey was? Um, how did he react? What did he tell you? Did he ever get a chance to speak to you about your journey at Attic and what you're building there?
Yeah, he said, he gave me some lots of coaching in the beginning. He
Mm-hmm.
would say, obviously, the first 3 years of any startup
Mm-hmm.
will be crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Crucial in terms of its life expectancy, maybe. So
Right.
you establish the roots of the business. You establish, your team, your ethics, your culture, and then in theory, then you move to the second stage of the business. And so I was pleased that he saw the first phase.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time he passed away, maybe we were like 6 years into Attic at this point.
Okay.
So I think he was very proud of that. It's very, I mean, the hardest part of entrepreneurship is actually starting something.
True.
Like the running, the growing is still difficult, but actually that first step is the biggest step in many ways. Even today, even with None, even with other brands and startups around the world, they know that. So I think he was very proud of that first step, and I think also he probably saw, the continuation of his mindset, his entrepreneurial kind of approach to life, and seeing one of it. I have also three brothers. Seeing one of his sons kind of moving to this entrepreneurial, he would have been proud of all of his family, but maybe also he would have seen himself as a young man, maybe.
Right.
So I think that I like to think that, as part of my as I journey off onto the next venture.
Wonderful. Thank you for speaking about this, James. I mean, it's so insightful. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Coming to my next question, again, a little bit about the unknown, right? So I want to ask you about one skill set that really does help people succeed. Now, while the measure of success is different for everybody, what is one skill set that helps people succeed or yourself succeed, but is relatively unknown or ignored? Not put there in the forefront, like discipline and determination and all of that, passion, right? Do you think there's any such skill set that you can think of right now?
Yeah, I think asking why. Again, let's go back to imagine you have your daughter or your niece and she's 6 years old. Okay, let's make a cup of tea. She says, why? Well, it's nice to have a cup of tea. I'm going to get the milk and the tea. Why?
Right.
Well, I now need to get the cup. Why? This naivety of a child wanting to, that's their learning mechanism, right? But if we ask that as adults, like, why? Not to be difficult, not to be pretentious, but just like, why? Tell me why. Tell me why. Keep going. So I think then it leads to like a saturation of answers. And then at the end of that might be, yeah, you know what? I don't want a cup of tea. I think we should go out and let's go out and have a Coca-Cola instead. Like there may be something at the end of it that changes the direction. Maybe not. But I think this curiosity of a child is important in all professions, not just creative, not just entrepreneurs. Just having that curiosity and challenging the norm. I think is, I don't know what the word, maybe it's curious, but I think it's also an important thing for us all to have all the way through to our final days.
Right.
To be able to maintain that, I think is always, it makes it interesting. It makes it, the conversation, not to be argumentative, but just to be like creatively curious as to why should we do it that way? I used to think this at Coca-Cola, like, why do we do this? We did this for the last World Cup. Why are we doing the same thing?
Right.
Right. Let's do something different. And so, I think that's a skill set that we all have, that we can leverage as adults too.
Wonderful. Coming to my last few questions, just a couple of them now, James. And one of them, I want you to tell people one unknown thing about Coca-Cola, the brand that it is, right? There's so much known about it, right? Everybody's seeing their every move. What are you speaking? What are you doing? There must be something unknown about the brand that people should know about.
Yeah. One story I like from Coca-Cola that is probably published, so it's known, but it is not widely known. So the famous logo, which we know, the Coca-Cola script. So this was so the designer of that was the bookkeeper of the founder.
Wow.
So the founder is John Pemberton. He's the inventor of Coca-Cola. His bookkeeper was a gentleman called Frank Robinson. And in the late 19th century, he had a ledger for the sales of Coca-Cola in a financial ledger, and he wrote on the cover Coca-Cola. And the founder said, "This is pretty good. I like this this Spencerian cursive script." So he extracted from the ledger, and it became the logo of today. Now, the interesting thing is, this is the story, but one of the most famous logos on the planet was designed by an accountant. So incredible. This means we all have that creative opportunity to do something, right? It doesn't have to be the designers. So there's room for everybody. But I think this is a really interesting story that, the bookkeeper, the financial accountant of Coca-Cola designed the logo.
I think that's a fabulous story. It is somewhere known, but I think, like you rightly mentioned, not widely known, right? And like you rightly said, it can inspire so many people, this story, right? That if the world's probably and arguably most famous brand's logo is made by a bookkeeper, I think there's so much potential in what an individual can do, right? Very, very inspiring story.
Yeah. And I think with the rise of, recently on the last decade of like design thinking and workshops, I mean, bringing people into that room, digital, virtual room, or a real room, who are not designers, who are not creatives, who are not like the artist, but they have an interesting perspective. This is a good example of from 100 more years ago, of how we are working and how we should embrace all different professions in the creative process today.
Right. Coming to my next question, in terms of, if you could speak about one relatively unknown brand today that you follow, or that you just are aware of and you really like their communication.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I think apart from but no, it's interesting because I think by, let's say, maybe it's more of a prediction of what's to come. What would we feel like if, like, by 2030, so in 10 years, the top 10 brands of the world, okay, I bet maybe 5 of them we haven't even heard of yet.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So maybe it's a wrong prediction, but the idea that there's going to be some amazing newcomer brands to our lives, the will form relationships. Sure, yes, Coca-Cola, Google, Nike, yeah, Facebook. Yes, but the exciting thing is for all entrepreneurs and all creators is there's room for more. And that those new brands of the future maybe are very small today and have not actually been founded yet.
Right.
So I think it's more around that for me, that I don't know who those next amazing, huge brands will be.
Yeah.
But I do know that they will come.
Right.
And whether it's automotive or food or beverage or sports, who knows? All of the above, tech, of course. But it's like for me, there's an exciting decade ahead of change, disruption, newcomers to the market, every marketplace, everything's been disrupted, right? So I think that can breed a whole new generation of purpose-driven brands that connect with an audience, next generation of the 2020s, the roaring 20s. Again, maybe we'll see.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point. I mean, who would have guessed in the 90s something like Amazon would one day be one of the world's biggest companies or the world's biggest firms, right? Amazon was probably, I don't know if it existed in the 90s, but wasn't around in people's minds at least.
Yeah, it was the Kodak, the GM, the usual big global companies, the traditional industrial, versus the sort of the next generation of technology and maybe data. So I think that's coming back to my earlier story, maybe around moving house and adapting to change. That excites me now, because I don't want to be too comfortable with the same brands. Like I find that interesting when a new brand comes and starts to become very big, very quickly, as long as they can sustain and they have a role in our lives. I think there's room for more.
Fabulous, James. My last question: have you ever, and I saw some in your slides, there were some bits of Indian advertising in Coca-Cola that I could figure there, especially with the Bollywood actors, the ones that I saw there with that, right? Have you ever sort of seen anything, heard anything, or consumed anything from the Indian advertising space? Apart from Coca?
Well, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think through my Coca-Cola role, yes. My request, if I could make a request, is I would like to. I mentioned known and known. If some Indian creatives, advertising, design, technology, digital, illustration, typography, I need to educate myself more on the Indian creative community.
Right.
Including brands, because I think this is an important time for everybody in the world, but it's an important time in my journey of being able to sort of be less purely looking in my own world, and now starting to sort of grow out the business. But we already had some people sign up from India on Known and Known, so I feel a few promising creative rock stars coming our direction. But if anybody's listening and would like to make contact like that and give me the education, I would welcome it. I would be so grateful for this as well, to widen my perception. Other than my Coca-Cola Indian, I know it's a very popular brand, and I always loved Thumbs Up. I mentioned Thumbs Up was a very iconic.
Sort of, absolutely.
Yeah, I love this brand. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
My impression is a very entrepreneurial country. I was fortunate growing up in the UK, huge Indian population. Absolutely. And this is why I love Indian curry so much in my life. Even I can find it in Atlanta too. So it's an important part of my diet. Let's put it this way.
Lovely.
And I love our mutual love for cricket and our kind of relationship beyond that. But I think just understanding the complexity of Indian marketing advertising, I would love to read and learn more on this.
Absolutely. I'm sure a lot more people will sign up on Known Unknown from India. James, I thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I think it's been a learning session for me and for everybody who's going to be listening to this. I thank you so much. And once again, an absolute pleasure. May known unknown, be able to actually do what you wanted to be doing, because I see it's an initiative from your heart and you really do want to bring people together on this. So my best wishes on that.
Thank you. This has been such a great conversation. You opened up so many different questions I've never been asked before. So I really appreciate this too.
Really glad to hear that, James. Thank you so much. Thank you.